I'd encourage you to read the text for yourselves. As Daniel tells him, this is what's going to happen. You are going to be driven from civilization. You will live and be like a wild animal. You will eat like an ox. The kingdom will be taken away from you. Your fingernails will grow. Your hair will become like that of an eagle, it says. I'm not quite sure why your hair would become like an eagle. It's certainly not feathers, it's just hair. And this is no affront to anyone who has long hair here, okay? This is just, the picture is complete abandonment. This man is to go through what we today would call a complete emotional and physical collapse, a breakdown which leaves him incapable and unable to function as a king emperor. Worse than that, as a human being. He can't care for himself. He can't have others care for him. He ends up in a field, I would imagine, somewhere within one of his houses. They bundle off the king emperor so no one can see what's going on. That's what they did with King George, the English king, who had a film made about him called The Madness of King George. A good, godly Christian man. Very few people realize that. They remember him because, block your ears if you're from the States, everyone. He's the one, according to the English, who lost the United States from the empire, and the British never forgave him for it. But he was a godly Christian man, and he had a mental health episode whereby he was completely incapacitated for over a year, and no one knew what to do. He was restored to his emotional health. He was a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. Godly man. But it was kept away from the people. And so here is this great king, Nebuchadnezzar, and he is completely out of his mind. In verse 36, it talks about the fact when sanity returned to me. In other words, he was insane for a period of time. He experienced a complete collapse in all of his emotions. Now, God used that sovereignly to bring this man to himself. Now, God is a God of means. God uses the things of creation. And many of his miracles actually are him using the things, the substances of creation, and he mixes them and does amazing things with them. Either he changes the seasons, he changes the laws of gravity, he changes various things, but he uses that which he has already created. He doesn't even need to create things from nothing anymore. He uses what he has already made because he's God. So really the issue isn't, well, does God expect everybody to go insane before they become Christians? No, he doesn't. But God uses the means of things to bring this man to a relationship with himself. Mental illness is something that is prevalent in today's society. It is becoming more so. That's highly likely because we live in a more pressurized world. The digital revolution we are going through is provoking many psychological problems within young people and older people too. Addictions, which actually lead to all sorts of self-harm and levels of violence and other issues as well. Wars obviously do not help either. Lockdowns and pandemics also are a major aggravation. We are witnessing an explosion of mental health issues right now. Many of the people that we see on our streets who have nowhere to live, a significant minority of those probably have mental health issues which have in some reason or way caused them to be on that street. Mixed up with alcohol, mixed up with not taking the right medication, mixed up with all sorts of other things, but at the root, underneath, usually are some kind of mental health issues. There are mental health issues within family, with children, with parents. At the end of the day, Alzheimer's itself is a mental health issue. Obviously, it's one that somehow we feel not comfortable with, but we recognize that it's there, and we know that in the later stages of life, some of us will have dementia, some of us will have Alzheimer's, and some of our dearly loved family members as well. These are just realities, they are facts of our existence on this earth. But God uses these things to bring this man to himself. With the image of the tree, we can see various things which are true. They are almost parabolic of what happens with mental health issues. Number one, they can come at any time. The king was prosperous. He had everything he needed. He should be enjoying life. And suddenly, he has this mental collapse. Now, admittedly, it's because he says, look at all these things I have created. And God says, no, you haven't. I'm now going to take them all away from you. You are going to see that your pride, your conceit, your haughtiness actually are your downfall. I'm the king, not you. Just pushing that slightly to one side, the tree is the picture of blessing. The branches are chopped off the tree. When you watch someone go through mental health collapses, when you watch someone, whether it might be schizophrenia, it could be paranoia, it could be any manner of other grouped psychological or psychiatric issues, there is huge damage which is done to the life of that person. Studies are stopped. Careers never get going. Careers get stopped. Abuse of alcohol, other things come in. All sorts of things people try to compensate, but their life is now swinging violently from one side to the other. The branches of the tree called prosperity of my life become disfigured. And at worst, the trunk is chopped and it comes crashing to the ground. People end up in hospital for 3 months, 4 months at a time in psychiatric units. This happens in every country. Some talk about it, some don't want to talk about it, but it is reality. There is an English word called bedlam. Have you ever heard that word? My dad liked to use the word bedlam. It basically described when he walked in the door from work and 4 of us children were all running around completely wild. It's bedlam in here. Bedlam means complete noise. It means crazy cacophony of noise. Do you know where that word comes from? Didn't come from my dad. I assume you've heard of it. Have you heard of the word bedlam? You can look it up in a dictionary afterwards. Bedlam is actually Bethlehem, but Bethlehem was the place in the 16th century and earlier, probably the 13th century and on, they used to take all the people who had lost their minds in London. They would take them to the hospital called Bethlehem. The name became shortened to Bedlam. And so the idea of bedlam, this cacophony of noise, is actually the sounds of people who have lost their mind. That is how people viewed those with mental illness in the past. Thank God, in the last 100 years, huge advances have taken place. We do not ship people off to asylums anymore, and they're not just left there. Now we have plenty of help from psychiatry, psychology, and pastoral support. Now, those 3 are separate. Pastoral support does not give all the answers. You will rapidly find when someone is having a psychotic episode, you need more than pastoral support. You are going to need psychiatric help. You are going to need psychological help. The 3 have to work together. One cannot do the job of the other, and they all have to have some respect for one another. Therefore, as a church family, we encourage one another to be honest. We encourage one another that actually in the Western world, where we have recourse to public health, where there is a system which gives psychiatric and psychological help, that where that need comes, you should go. There is no shame. There is absolutely no sense in it is the wrong thing to do because we need help. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar, no one could do anything with him. He was completely uncontrollable, and he lived like a wild animal. But in today's world, I ask you, if you broke your leg, you'd have some kind of plaster on. People would automatically be very sympathetic when I'm so sorry, you've obviously really hurt your leg. What did you do? And they want to hear the story and maybe sign the plaster cast or whatever it is. But what about when you break your mind? There's no visible outside evidence that you've got anything wrong with you. And yet, like King Nebuchadnezzar, you are out of your own mind. You need compassion. You need help. When you break your leg, they put a plaster cast on. They give you some painkillers usually, don't they? You need pain relief. You need some medication. There is absolutely nothing wrong with taking medication which is appropriate, which is given through the psychiatrist, through the health system. It's absolutely appropriate. Of course, it's going to make you feel different. The same way you take painkillers for the pain in your leg. You feel sleepy and all sorts. Medication, if someone needs medication and they take it, that is a good thing. Psychology and psychiatry, there is nothing wrong with them. The only time there's a problem is when the person who is the psychiatrist does not stick to their professional body's guidelines. As long as that person sticks to the guidelines, there is no problem whatsoever. Do you need a Christian nurse or doctor to come and treat your broken leg? I'm sorry, no. Are you a Christian? I can't have you to mend my leg. Please send a Christian doctor. No, of course not. They're health professionals. When you have a sick mind, as long as that psychiatrist or that psychologist is actually working within the boundaries of the framework of the body which has licensed them, there should be no problem. They may say to you, once you say that you're a Christian and that you believe God can heal you and all sorts of other things, they would rather you saw a different psychiatrist or psychologist. Absolutely fine. It just means that they are saying, professionally, they think somebody else may be better for you. And they're probably right. There's absolutely no problem. These taboos, they have to go. They have to go. The branches were chopped. The trunk was chopped. There was a cap placed upon the stump in bronze. Remember, this is the Bronze Age. Okay, so very strong metal. It has to be bronze. That's why it's called the Bronze Age. It's capped. Many people who have mental health issues, as you pass through them, they try to get their life back together, and they just can't. They just can't. And that's okay. It's got to be okay, because they are unwell. Until, metaphorically, that cap is removed, there will be no shoots coming back out of the stump. But just to encourage you, is this the only place in the Bible we read about stumps? Are there any other stumps in the Bible? What about Isaiah chapter 11? Is there a stump in Isaiah chapter 11? Oh, hang on. A shoot comes from the stump of Jesse? Who is that shoot? Why, it's the Lord Jesus Christ. The Messiah comes from the stump of Jesse. Jesse is the father of David, of King David. Jesus Christ is from the line of King David. Therefore, he is the shoot that comes from the stump. There is hope for stumps. Why? Because stumps have root systems which go under the ground. You know, there's as much rootage as there is shootage. In other words, what you see at the top is down below as well. Some of you may want to remove some trees that are near your houses. Or think about the foundations, because there's a tree growing under there. But the point is, there is hope. We need to rethink our view of mental health.